Hello, David here with Northwest Outdoor Adventures, and today I'm going to talk about my top tips for getting me through the winter for running. And so I figured I'd share these and let you guys know what I do to get myself through the winter, and maybe it would help some of you. So let's just jump right into it. First and foremost, safety. That's always a huge issue, and it's especially important in the winter. So big things to look out for, I would say, would be, keep an eye on the weather. Make sure you realize how that's going to affect you, but also your surroundings. By that I would mean, drivers, say if you're running on the road, with the darkness and the potential for a lot of rain, depending on where you live and things like that, how that impacts a driver's visibility and how it might affect you. So keep those things in mind. Of course, if you're running trails, I would say be especially careful on, remote trails that don't have service, or where you're going to encounter icy or snowy conditions. Of course, use that same rule that you always should use if you're hiking or trail running, and that's telling a person where you're going to be for how long, and so on and so forth. So keep all that stuff in mind. That's probably the biggest tip I have. But anyways, I digress. The next biggest thing I would say is gear. So having the right gear is critical to having good runs in bad weather and in the dark and the cold and things like that. So make sure you have a good base layer. Of course, dressing in layers in general is really important to do to keep warm and dry. Which another thing, I don't really expect to stay dry a lot of the times if I'm running in the Pacific Northwest. So having good moisture wicking clothes that keep you warm is very important. So it's worth the money, in my opinion, to invest in a good set of one or two, of course I probably have like 4 or 5 by now, outfits that you can run in comfortably in the winter. And then of course there's accessories you should buy as well. So a good headlamp, which you don't have to buy expensive ones. I think I have a $25 Nitecore one off Amazon that I really like, that I use most of the time anyways. And then there's things that you can also get, like micro spikes, like the Katula ones I really like. But again, with those you can even buy from your local hardware store just some screws and put it in your shoes. So there's cheap ways to do this. But in general, for things like safety, I probably wouldn't skimp out. But again, that's up to you. Another piece of gear that I really like, that I couldn't live without at this point, is my shoe dryer, believe it or not. So you can get a cheap one off Amazon. And those really make a huge difference if you're running in an area where you're gonna get a lot of wetness, so whether it's rain or snow or whatever. If your shoes get wet, they dry them really quick. It's nice for that quick turnaround. And so yeah, it's something to look into. So my third kind of big tip would be staying motivated. And I'm sure that's something everyone suffers with in the winter. And how I typically handle it is, for starters, I kind of scale back my expectations. So I don't run as much as I do in the summer, mainly because I don't enjoy it as much. So again, I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's dark when I wake up and go to work, and it's dark when I get home. And so, I don't necessarily like running in the dark, in the rain, in the cold, and so I just don't do it as much. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So I found that I need a certain level to keep myself, kind of happy, I guess. And so, I stick to that, which for me is usually in between like 20 and 30 miles a week. So I try to keep that in mind. I try to stick in that range. And so that might vary, from person to person, or you may just find that you really need to push yourself each and every week, which, is totally fine. But, researching that, trying to figure out what that is. And again, like I said, I just think it doesn't matter as much, to keep you interested in running long-term. It's probably worth it to scale it back if that's going to make you happier. So keep that in mind. Going along with the motivation theme, I would say, sign up for races. I've found that it always helps to have a goal, and whether that's a 5K or a half marathon or whatever, or longer, it's just nice to be working towards something. So especially in the winter, I try to sign up for, a couple races, and sometimes I'll try to do it in like a cool location that I've been wanting to go to, just to kind of motivate me a little bit more and give me something to look forward to. So I'd recommend doing that. And then of course, going along with motivation and also safety would be running with a buddy. So it's definitely safer and much more motivating when you're running with another person. I typically do prefer to run alone, but in the winter I'll usually run with my girlfriend. And even though we have totally different paces, We both really enjoy it because, I don't know, it feels safer, first of all. And I don't know, it's more motivating when you know you have a scheduled run that you plan to do together. And yeah, it's just easier to keep it scheduled and keep doing it. So I would say, you know, running with a buddy, whether that's you know, a friend, family, whatever, or even a dog, I mean, anything, I think it can definitely help when there's somebody else relying on you out on the trails to help motivate you to get out there. And then finally, just some generic ones, you know, that you'll probably find on the internet a lot, which would be nutrition. You know, obviously your body works a little bit differently in the cold. And so for most people, that means you need a little bit more hydration, so more fluids, or you need to be a little bit more careful about your hydration. So you need more fluids. You probably are burning more calories to stay warm, so you probably need a little bit more food as well. So keep those things in mind. You know, don't be afraid to overpack when you're doing those kind of long runs and things like that. And then of course, some simple tips like when you're running on the road, say, you know, try to go out on your run. If it's an out and back, go out with the wind against you, so that on your way back you have the wind to your back. Makes it a little bit easier coming in, not as cold. Obviously everyone probably goes by the same rule. You want to start your run feeling cold so that you're not just sweating your, you know, you're not sweating your you-know-what off halfway through the run. So most people would probably dress like it's 10 plus degrees warmer than it actually is. I usually do that as well. And so, yeah, those are kind of my tips. Whatever tips you may have, you know, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And that's pretty much it. All right, well, thanks for watching. Happy trails. See you guys next time.